Hi guys, and welcome to China Perspectives. My name is 𝗵𝗵𝗶 𝗧𝗵𝗵𝗶, and today I want to talk about the innovation search by Chinese companies, or innovation with Chinese characteristics. While we all know that most of the stuff we buy as average consumers and much of what gets traded in a B2B environment comes from China, I really think the recent geopolitical chaos and the tariff discussion even the most non-political person has had in the last few weeks have made this clear to everybody. Everything is made in China. And I feel many of us are okay with this old image. China makes cheap stuff, I can buy cheap stuff. That is what many think, right? But what many don't know is that China has leapfrogged into the innovation space. So yes, China has started to out-innovate many other countries, and we see it rippling through the different industry segments. The Chinese gadget you bought last month, be it a robot vacuum cleaner, a DJI camera, I'm using one to film this right now, by the way, or many other techie gadgets, they work. They look cool. They are affordable. You know, your friend's new electric car, also Chinese. And your teenager, addicted to an app made by ByteDance. But it is not only in the consumer space. The same is happening on a big scale in the industrial landscape. I made a video about how Western firms are destroying their own market in China, which I'm linking in the comments below. Long story short, Western companies in China buy less and less from other Western firms, and more from Chinese suppliers who have similar quality products at a much more lower price point. Often, the new supplier is managed by a local individual who used to work at the big international OEM, so they really know their tech. We are talking about everything from industrial components to finished and semi-finished goods in the B2B manufacturing space. And here's the thing. China used to be the factory of the world. Now it's turning into the innovation hub. And if you're still stuck in the idea that China copies while the West innovates, you might be looking into the rear-view mirror and remember a feeling of days which are almost past us. Let's look at this in more detail. Part 1. The Western innovation legacy. It is powerful and it brought us great stuff, but it is also so slow. So historically, innovation in the West looked a lot like this. You had big budgets, you had very long R&D cycles, and I mean long. You had careful testing, and testing again, and again, and again. You had patent portfolios carefully going into every detail and nuance in preparation. Think about Apple, Tesla, Siemens, Amazon, Bosch, Vestas, Rockwell Automation, the list goes on. You know, as you know, there's a big fuss about Apple potentially relocating its manufacturing centers from China to India right now. And a supplier told me that an average iPhone development takes around 2 to 3 years normally, whereas the Huawei competition does it in half the time or less. So yes, the West invented the modern innovation pipeline, as you and I may have learned in school. But it was never poised for speed and often worked in the understanding of time in the context of a European or an American timeline, not with China speed, which is what Chinese firms are bringing to the innovation table right now. This is a drastic shift which is changing the landscape of how innovation is done. Part 2, innovation journey. So let's revisit what I call the journey of the thing. First, there was a thing. So the thing can really be anything. It can be a car, a phone, a drone, a coffee machine, can be a drilling machine, a washing machine, what have you, a product. And then second, what happened? China studied the thing. Sometimes simply copied it. Sometimes opened it, looked inside, took it apart, and then reverse engineered. Sometimes acquired it via joint ventures or merger and acquisition. Sometimes via forced tech transfer, and sometimes via blatant theft. Sometimes this also happened via naive foreign managers who openly shared their tech in the spirit of open cooperation. I was there often enough when that happened. Equal partnership and all that, and I met a lot of these in the previous decade myself. And sometimes also just by genuinely making their own thing. And yes, the Chinese government did much to support this, ranging from subsidies to protecting their own companies in the domestic market, keeping foreign companies out or small, and help them grow in the local market. But no matter how China got the tech, what happened after is really what's affecting us now. This is what we call cost innovation. So China took the thing and made it a lot cheaper. Due to China being the workbank of the world, this is easy to do. Still, most of what you may buy outside of China has an enormous markup in profit by whatever brand you're buying it from. And most recently, also a large makeup, of course, due to tariffs. The actual products here in China are very, very affordable. Even more so if you're able to speak Chinese and have your own local network, which locals, of course, have. So the price savings are staggering. At this stage, the quality of the thing was often still wonky. So what happened a lot in that time is that Chinese customers bought the Chinese products in areas where quality was not system critical and bought the foreign products where it matters, from baby milk to special components for airplanes. Trust in Chinese quality was low across the board from everyone. The foreign companies at that stage often still bought the foreign products as well. This is also the time when we had many, many stories of the former employee or the Chinese GM of a foreign company and his brother's wife's cousin's uncle or whatever opened a factory right next door that just happened to produce the exact same thing. And a few years later is when it gets unexpected for many firms. China improved the thing. This is product innovation. For example, let's look at drones and cameras. DJI is a Chinese firm which flipped a previously expensive and kinda niche market around and made it available to a much larger audience. I personally remember buying my very first drone in 2018 or so. All my friends got the Mavic and I got the Spark, mainly because I'm a girl and my drone needs to fit inside my purse and the big one didn't, and I didn't want to carry something extra around. Anyways, what is important is that the DJI basically innovated the whole product category, and today, if you're filming professionally or recreationally, there's a good chance that you're using a DJI. Next, China added additional features to the thing. Feature innovation. For example, we have touch screens in rice cookers. We have facial recognition in elevators. We have smart vending machines everywhere which take mobile phone payments. I mean, 𝗨𝗵𝗶 is working on flying cars. Talk about extra features. Like the 𝗵𝗰𝗁, a part of 𝗨𝗵𝗶 Motors, with its electric vehicle takeoff and landing, is basically a truck that carries a two-seat multicopter. Now, if that prototype will work out and be economically feasible, I don't know. How that thing is going to be allowed to fly in the extremely heavily restricted Chinese airspace, I also don't know. But you know what? That's not the point. The point is to try and show how wild the features are getting. In some cases, this even included deep tech. So what does it mean? So deep tech means technological advancement based on significant science or engineering breakthrough. It is usually a very new application or use of the thing. For example, some Western brands that you know are OpenAI models like ChatGPT, IBM started with quantum computing, NVIDIA has AI chips powering machine learning workloads, and so on. On the Chinese side, maybe you know 𝗧𝗵𝗲 that's doing computer vision for smart cities, surveillance, and logistics. You certainly know Huawei. They have custom 5G chips, Harmony operating systems, in-house AI architecture. And then it became about changing aesthetics and design of the thing. So design innovation is what we call it. So NIO, Li Auto, 𝗨𝗵𝗃, they're competing not just on tech, but on style. A lot of design choices mean changing how products look, how they feel, and sometimes how they connect emotionally with users. Very often I feel it's either very sleek and minimalistic or it's super, super futuristic. Also, the personalization of the items, color, size, app features, payment models, whatever has changed. And yes, people make purchasing decisions for many, many different reasons, but the option to heavily customize any item is attractive immediately. The more customization, the better for many customers. And then China expanded the customer base. When they started, they mainly sold in China. Now, many Chinese firms have moved and are moving from local mass market to global consumers. Think about Temu, think about Shein, think about Alibaba for retail. Think about BYD or Huawei or Xiaomi, which you have in your city, I'm sure. Everybody knows these brands now, whereas 10 years ago, no one has heard about them, or best case, they had a little smirk like, oh, the Chinese. Now they are valid alternatives for shoppers all around the globe. The first mover Chinese companies don't go global. They are already global. What is happening now, today, is the beginning of the second wave. Smaller private companies, as well as their entire supply chains, are coming to a mall near you. Sounds exciting, doesn't it? Well, for us as consumers, maybe. But for many firms who have hundreds of years of history doing innovation differently, that sounds pretty scary. Part 3, innovation speed, a compressed timeline. So China has really compressed innovation cycles. From idea to mass production, often 12 to 18 months. That includes product design, feedback, iteration, and launch. And why? Because of integrated supply chains. Everything is nearby here. You don't need to go very far. Massive consumer base is also here. So you test quickly, learn fast enough in this huge market. There's a digital first infrastructure. So QR codes, super apps, mobile payments are so common to use, even for grandma and grandpa, senior citizens. And there's a willingness to fail. We call it 3 steps forward and then 2 steps back. This is a common process to shoot a product out, see real customer feedback, and adjust for it. For many Western firms, especially talking about my fellow Germans, this is a very unsettling approach. In fact, due to historical legacy, Western firms are stuck in much, much longer timelines due to annual budget approvals or multi-year product roadmaps. Shareholder anxiety. There's also, you could call brand protection paranoia in the best possible way. There's a need for perfection. So even in fast sectors like Silicon Valley, it often takes years to get from prototype to profit. Part number 4 is what enables Chinese to innovate so quickly. Well, part of it is cultural. I would say a lot of it is cultural, actually, and the rest is economic need to grow in order to succeed. In China, speed is not only needed for survival, but speed is a very valid business strategy. And sometimes, I feel that Western company owners don't recognize it. It is a strategy. From a cultural perspective, Confucius is very important. And Confucius once said, paraphrasing, by 3 methods we learn wisdom. First, by reflection, which is the most noble. Second, by imitation, which is the easiest. And third, by experience, which is the most bitter one. China started with imitation, then came improvement, and now experience and disruption. As one of my professors in university once told me, when I asked him, and I think in 2006 or 2007, I asked him, when will China start becoming strict about intellectual property right protection? And he said, China will enforce IP laws the moment they have something to protect. And guess what? They do now. China, in fact, filed 1.58 million patent applications in 2023, more than the next 10 countries combined. A new law was just revised in May 2025, aiming to protect Chinese firms from having to share their IPR with countries they try to expand into. And the Chinese government can be very picky about not confirming investments into countries if they have concerns that either tech, know-how, and/or jobs are moving out of China. So while copying still happens in China, absolutely, it is not a copycat economy anymore as it was before. The decade to come will see many Chinese firms moving into an innovation engine. So you may say, that's not fair. China forced us to give our tech and our know-how and stole everything, and now they're our competitors. And I hear that a lot, and you know what? I understand. At the same time, we also have to be honest. Nobody forced any foreign firm to come to China. China didn't force globalization. It was Western companies and governments who embraced it. They decided to outsource for profit to their shareholders. They invested for scale, for more and more and more and more. They celebrated when China joined the WTO in 2001 to use it for increased trade and benefit from the large domestic market. And when I say they, let me be very, very crystal clear. They are the main shareholders of the very same large Western companies who are now in hot water. They are the CEOs at that time who decided they wanted to not only produce everything cheaper and faster in China to increase their profit margin, but they also wanted to develop the China local market. So yes, the unhappiness is valid. If you as an individual got between the forces of big business, politicians and corporations, and you lost your job, that is tough, and I'm sorry. And at the same time, before we put the blame on just one country and like to jump on the Chinese stole our jobs and know-how bandwagon, it was likely an individual from the headquarters in your very country where you live that decided you are too expensive and their company would like to make more profit by having somebody in China work on it cheaper. And us, the consumers in the West, we also did our part. We voted with our wallets. Cheaper phones, cheaper clothes, cheaper gadgets, all made in China. I often hear my Western friends, if they're not living here, say, oh, China is so bad, they're so capitalistic, whatever. And then they turn around and they're having 2 Temu orders coming in twice a week. It's our lifestyle choices and overall increase in lifestyle that we enjoyed over the last decade or so was in large part due to cheaper products from China. This is also what our American friends may feel soon, as tariffs are slowly taking effect, not so much because of the tariffs, but because it makes it very clear to see how very little products are completely manufactured in our own country and what it costs to buy products from your own country, no matter what we buy. So in case of doubt, always follow the money. So what now? So here's where we are. China is not just building vastly different products. They're doing it faster than we have been before. But will the current speed of innovation be sustainable? I don't know. I guess it depends on the industry. But what I do know is that, for example, in the auto market, things have gotten ridiculous here in China. I see so many new brands almost every day. The newness is becoming boring because everything is new and it's not exciting anymore. It's just slightly annoying. Of course, there's also consolidation happening. Some products just work and others don't. I know some of my friends, they tell me they wouldn't even buy one of these new brands as they can never be sure if the model will survive the next 3 years and if they can get servicing and spare parts when they need it in the future. And yet, the pals over there at BYD are working in the design centers in 2 shifts each day. That's 2 times 8 hours. So while I could imagine that in some areas we will hit a more sustainable and more thought through level, in others we have barely started. And does that mean all Chinese products are better than Western ones? Of course not. But does it mean Western firms do not innovate enough? Also, that's not what it means. But it does mean that if you are a family-owned company with a 200-something-year history and you are used to having a bunch of R&D guys work in your basement for 5 years before they have a new product that is confirmed and you're still doing everything in-house, if you're still unsure about your expansion strategies, then I would encourage you to remember that innovation does not only happen in the countries that you think of first. A lot of innovation now comes out of China and out of Asia. The question is not, how do we defend our market share? Or how do we make the product 100% perfect? That's not the question anymore. Now the question is, how do we reimagine our innovation process? How do we stay agile? How do we embrace speed without sacrificing quality? China is not going away. China's speed is not going away. You cannot sit this one out. Slow and steady may not win the race anymore. Many Western countries will have to change their understanding of how things are done if you do want to stay competitive on a global scale, because the game is global now, tariffs and geopolitics notwithstanding. And if that sounded scary for you as a Western company, then I would just like to say that every challenge is also an opportunity. A lot of it is a mindset. So as a German, the label Made in Germany was supposed to be a punishment after the war and developed itself into a garant for quality and engineering. While I do not know what the future holds, I would always encourage a mindset that focuses on growth instead of just defending our market share. And the thought process of, oh no, the Chinese firms are innovating faster than us, we have a problem, compared to, oh, the Chinese firms are innovating faster than us, let's find a way to make this work in our favor, is often just wording and mindset, but it can be what separates you from focusing on problems versus opportunities. We live in transformative times and might as well accept it and make the best out of it. Let me know how things are going in your industry and which industries and countries you see Chinese products coming into and where they start taking local market share. Thank you guys for listening, and if you liked this video, please comment and follow and give me a subscribe. It really helps my channel out. Thanks guys, bye bye.